Remember, smiles, the world smiles with you. Hi, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. It is a busy month for the Beacon newspapers, with inserts here in Montgomery County for the voting guide, as well as throughout the metropolitan area for their housing guide. Here to talk about all of this is the editor and publisher of the Beacon newspapers, Stuart Rosenthal. The Board of Elections needs to check all the polling places in the county to make sure that voters can depend on fair and efficient service. Judy Morenoff directs the polling place support program for the league. She has all the information. The annual meeting of the Committee for Montgomery gave members and the community at large an opportunity to meet and question candidates who will be running for the state senate and delegate spots in Montgomery County's 8 districts. Barbara Henry, the managing director of the Committee for Montgomery, is here to tell us all about it. The African American community in this county has significant concerns as it goes to the polls. Henry Hailstock, who comments on a regular basis for this program, is here to provide us with his view of the community's beliefs and attitudes as we head to the elections. Stuart, welcome back.
Thank you, Don.
This is the multi-insert Beacon.
Yes.
So let's start off first with what's going on around the district, or actually Montgomery County. Let's start with the voter's guide.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. All of the Montgomery County editions of the Beacon have inside this month a 32-page voter's guide put together by the League of Women Voters with our assistance. But they have gone to all the candidates of all the races that are coming up for the June 24th election, and those who want to vote early can be doing so right now. And asked them questions and gotten all the candidates to say what their priorities are, what they feel about the budget or education, or whatever main issues are on their agenda. It's a phenomenal booklet. It's very helpful to those who are looking.
It's a great service, a great partnership that you have with the league each year, each election cycle. Anything hit you about this year's?
Well, I just wanted to say, there's so many things happening at once this time. It's the statewide races, the governor and the attorney general and whatnot. It's the congressional races for the House. It's the Montgomery County Council and Board of Elections races. I mean, it's so many things happening at once, and there's so much information there, and so many candidates running for some of these positions.
Now they're going to have that insert, and they need to spend time on that, but they also need to spend time on your other insert, don't they?
I would like that, yes. All of the copies of the Beacon this month are our housing options and home care insert. We do that every May, June, and July, a 3-month series of these articles. We just gather together all of the housing information that we get over the course of the year, and we put it together in these 3 different editions. It's for those who are living in their home and want to stay there, those who are planning to move and looking for options, retirement communities, affordable housing, how to find a real estate agent, and those who have health issues. Can they bring in home health care? How do you choose one? What are the long-term care options? Am I a caregiver? How do I deal with that? What are the new technologies and gadgets that are useful? All these topics are being addressed in these sections.
Does it go into the home care issue dealing with the state? Does it, with that marriage of private and the state?
I'm not sure I know what you're saying.
Well, now that with the health care, they brought it down into Montgomery County rather than they used to be in Baltimore. Now it's in Montgomery County. Montgomery County handles its own health care.
We're talking more about aides. These are additional privately paid assistants who come into your house to help you stay in your home, help you bathe or get dressed or fed or whatever, including whether they are the no-skilled ones who just keep you company or do your shopping, or whether they're the high-skilled nurses, RNs, and whatnot.
So this is totally private. It has
totally
no connection with the county or the state.
This is for people who are aging in place or whose adult children are concerned about their parents or grandparents.
You know, my community is probably similar to many. In Bethesda, it's a transition community where folks have been there living for 30, 40, 50 years in their houses. Recent discussions with neighbors. One neighbor wants to age in place, and talking about the challenges and really having to keep calling people is the issue.
We know that these new village concepts that are everywhere. There's so many of them in this area.
And the next door neighbor, she left, actually packed up yesterday, the house after 44 years. Out to a senior living community, and so is that typical?
Yes, absolutely. Most people, 85–90% of people, say they want to stay in their homes as long as they live. But as a practical matter, it stops making sense after a point. So
Right.
there are lots of options out there for people who will want to downsize or move or go into a
Are
community.
there any recommendations as far as rating of these?
Well, there's
individual-
information on where to get those kinds of ratings. Yes, there, especially on long-term care. There's federal websites where they analyze and give you reports on the deficiencies in these places. Yeah.
Anything as we talk about is we got about maybe a minute and a half left in this segment. Any things about or any information about trends going on right now? And then I want to ask you about some of the medical
Trends in
issues.
housing or
Trends in the housing and
Well,
senior housing.
people are always asking for affordable housing. That seems to be one of the biggest questions, and we have a story on that. What are the options right now in
Right.
Maryland, D.C., and Virginia? And what are the hopes for additional options coming up? Other than that, I think the trends are just more of the same. People want to stay in their home. There are more ways in which they can do that, more ways of getting help to make it possible.
Okay.
And then more communities opening up all the time if they decide to move. Can I touch quickly on a health story?
I want to hear this health story.
All right, well, we have our dear pharmacist column. We had a question about blood pressure, high blood pressure, and are there any natural remedies for high blood pressure? And she makes the point that what blood pressure medicines do, they either pull the liquid out of your blood, diuretics, or they vasodilate, they make your veins bigger to help the blood. And all these things are things that regular natural foods and vitamins and things can do as well. And so she gives alternatives. She says, don't stop your medicine, whatever you do. Talk to your doctor and see what you can do. But celery is like the #1 vegetable to help control blood pressure. Who knew? But there are a lot of studies on that. So
What about this young blood story?
that's about these mice. Isn't that incredible? Did you see that?
Yeah.
That they injected blood from young mice into older mice, and they basically got rejuvenated. They learned better, memorized things better. They did better on a treadmill. It was just they had more blood flow in the brain, and it was a protein they determined from the blood.
That's not unusual because blood doping is illegal in the sports world.
So it's already known for years it can help. That's right. It's a very interesting potential for the future.
Beacon newspapers on the cutting edge of blood doping, legalized blood doping.
Right. Hook me up.
Yeah, how about that?
Stuart, thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Morenoff, welcome back.
Thank you.
It is great to have you. Tell us about this wonderful program between the League of Women Voters and the Board of Elections on Election Day.
Okay, well, we're very fortunate in Montgomery County to have a very professional, nonpartisan Board of Elections. They've got a national reputation for running fair and moderately efficient as they can elections.
So clean.
And clean.
Clean elections,
yes.
right.
They train their judges in great detail, but they also need an independent assessment of what actually happens at the polling places. And for that, they contract with the League of Women Voters to run the polling place support program, through which we train volunteers to go out and visit every single of the 250 plus polling places in Montgomery County on primary election day and on the general election day, to check some major things like whether there is unimpeded access to the polling place, particularly for people in wheelchairs or with walkers, whether the voting units are set up in such a way to provide as much privacy as possible to the voter, considering the size and layout of the room, to look at whether if anybody is voting provisionally, their ballot cannot be counted unless the application for the provisional ballot is signed. And in past elections, sometimes some applications went in that weren't signed. The judges have been urged to be very careful about that, and we're checking for that.
Okay. Now they come in and they come in teams and they have like a pilot check, the whole checklist.
We come in with a 7-page paper questionnaire where we check yes or no for every item on it. I've named some of the major ones. There are also some minor ones, like whether a whole list of required signs are posted where a voter could read them if they wanted to.
We have a vision of ourselves as being squeaky clean. So historically, have we been squeaky clean?
No.
Squeaky clean, I think, yes.
No.
But we all know that sometimes there have been lines that were much longer than people wanted to stand in. Our voting equipment is getting on to 10 years old. Some of it is wearing out. We're going to have new voting equipment for the 2016 election. In the meantime, we have what we have, and it's distributed according to a state formula. And I think the state
Is early voting having an impact on this? Is it making it easier for you to do your job, or do you have to also investigate those things?
We are not involved in monitoring early voting. I think early voting should. The number of people voting early has gone up in every election since the Board of Elections started to offer it. In the past, I think there have been 5 early voting sites. This year, there are going to be 8 or 9. In deciding where to put them, the Board of Elections tried very hard to assure that they would be not too far from, no matter where you lived in the county, there would be an early voting site that would be not
Reasonable,
too far from where you were. And yes, it reduces the number of people trying to vote on election day.
How long has the League of Women Voters been involved with doing what you're doing now?
5, 6 election cycles, maybe more than that. That would be like 12 years.
12 years?
We've been doing it a long time.
Because I had a concern because I got a phone call in my office when I was president of the Montgomery County NAACP because we found out before the polls opened up that the ballots had a problem with Ike Leggett's name being on there when he first was running for county exec. And I had to call the Board of Elections to get that corrected, and they immediately had to send out new ballots to all of the polls. And it was a problem. Thank goodness we had monitors at some of the polls and who were also in the, as part of the election judging, and found that out, and thank God we found it in time. And if you remember, at the time that that election was taking place when he first was running, the polls opened late, and that was because the ballots were missing. The proper ballots were missing.
Well, Judy, you got 30 seconds on that one before we have to move on. Oh.
I don't have an answer to that one. Among the many things we check are more the operation of the polls on after they open on election day. We don't have, the polling place support program doesn't have a role to play in looking at the ballots in advance.
Judy, we could talk all day about this and elections because this is so many things that we don't think about when we go into the polls. What goes on to make it simple for us so we can make that decision the most important. Thank you for being here. And
Thank you for having me.
Those great thoughts. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Barbara Henry, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Committee for Montgomery, annual meeting, you forgo speeches.
Yes.
And instead open yourselves up to hear from a lot of candidates. Tell us about it.
Well, as you know, we focus our attention on the relationship between Montgomery County and the General Assembly, the Maryland General Assembly. So we decided this year to take a little different path, and we opened up our annual meeting for the program to anyone who was a registered candidate running for the General Assembly in Montgomery County. And we sent out an invitation to the 81 candidates who are running.
So the 81 candidates, now we've got 8 districts.
Correct.
So we've got 8 state senators and 24 state delegate seats
That's
up
right,
for election.
right.
Okay? That's a lot of candidates.
Right.
For
Well, in
32
District
spots.
20 alone, there are 9 candidates for the delegate race,
Okay.
just the delegate race.
Okay.
Because that's an open seat.
Yeah, actually, it's
So-
2 open seats in District 20. Yes, you're
so
correct.
people feel if they're ever going to run, that's
That-
the right time.
right
to
now
do
would be
it.
the time.
But let's be sure about that. They're all open seats.
Correct.
Because
That's
we
correct.
vote every 4 years.
Yes.
Nobody has a right to hold on.
That's correct.
That's
So,
what we have
politically
elections.
correct.
so we invited in 81 candidates, and we got 31 of them to show up.
Okay.
And it was quite interesting because not only do we get the usual cast of characters, there was even a Tea Party candidate there this time.
Really?
Yes, quite interesting. So we gave each of the 31 30 seconds to sort of walk across the stage, tell us who they were and kind of what they were about. And then we just opened up the meeting as sort of like a schmooze free-for-all, and whoever was there, we invited in the public for free, and our own membership and our board of directors, and we spent about an hour and a half in the back of the room just talking to each other.
It was interesting that they call it speed dating.
Yeah, we called it candidate speed dating, correct?
And
Yeah.
how did the public know that you were doing
We
this?
we used the good offices of Steve Simon and Van Eperen and Company to help us use their press lists to publicize it, and then we also publicized the event through Eventbrite. So you had to go on Eventbrite and just register, get a ticket. It was free, but you had to register. Yeah, it actually turned out pretty well. I think.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. You think?
I think it turned out pretty well. I'm sort of mindful of the fact that this year, because it's an off-year election, meaning there's no presidential election, and because it's a new date, June 24th, and not
Summertime.
I know, and not what everybody expects, the turnout on a lot of these events that I've gone to has been relatively low.
Yeah.
So I guess I was pretty impressed that we did as well as we did.
What, having moderated a couple of debates for candidates, it's what the candidates have said in these debates, or before and just after, is sometimes there are more candidates than there are people watching the debates. And they've had so many debates with so many different organizations. They talk about this, similar things because a lot of the same questions. But what are we going to do about turnout this year?
I think that's the one thing that really frightens me a lot is because people aren't paying attention to this. I think there's not a lot of drama at the top of the ticket, and so that's not drawing anybody out. But in addition to that,
not drama at the top of the ticket. The governor. I mean, I'm hearing ads where they're calling each other names now.
I just don't think people are paying attention to it.
No.
No, I really don't. And I think that's in my mind, nobody wants to pontificate on any of these things now, particularly after what happened in Virginia with Eric Cantor. But it seems to me that who's going to win is who turns out their voters, because it's not like anything else is drawing these voters out. It's not like there's a presidential and that's drawing people
We need
out.
a good scandal. That's everything.
A good scandal.
If you look back on the history of the primaries, you don't have a lot of voter turnout.
Right.
You really don't.
Right, particularly in off-year elections,
Yes,
you don't.
yes, and that's the real problem. But I think we are, as voters, are not educated enough on the issues and the concerns, and more so than that, people are just talking, they're talking faces and not really going into depth on some of the issues.
But let me ask you this question. We have this great voters guide. We've got the Beacon doing the work. We've got the League of Women Voters out there. We've got other organizations. It's not that the information's not available. It's people, why don't people go out? It's
Because
at their fingertips.
it's not the mass media. The Beacon does an outstanding job. The League of Women Voters does a phenomenal job. Especially, I look for their list every election year. But the problem is that the people are looking at the Washington Post and some of the other media, and the Post is prejudiced in who they cover.
Well, that's historically been a problem any place you live in the Washington metro area, because our paper of record is the national paper, and it doesn't focus on local issues.
That's it.
One final question
Yes,
before we
sir.
have to turn to the next segment. After speaking with these candidates, do you think out of this group you're going to have a number of individuals who are ready to move Montgomery County's agenda forward in Annapolis, or are we going to continue to have this issue of not a very united delegation that seems to haunt us every year?
This is flat out a guess, right? So I have no magic behind this, but my guess is that for the most part you're going to see the status quo, but there are places where there are open seats, so you're going to get new faces and new ideas in those seats.
Hopefully.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barbara. Look forward to it. Look forward to having you back again.
Thanks.
Henry,
Yes.
there are concerns in the African American community about this election.
More so than before. There've always been concerns, but more so than this before. People don't realize this is a banner year for this election, because you have 32 African American candidates running for the various offices that are there. Okay, now
In Montgomery County?
in Montgomery County.
And do we include the governor as well, or?
Yes.
Okay, okay,
Counting the governor.
okay, on our
Now,
ballot.
the biggest concern that we have is out of that 32 candidates, there's only a few that are really being covered. You have, and I'm not going to name names, but you have some candidates that don't even know it was running. The NAACP had a press conference to introduce the 32 candidates because we did not see any coverage on the majority of them. Now,
Sure.
the media did not cover that. You had you just had the majority of those candidates there, which was unprecedented. And what was also unprecedented is that they sat down after the press conference and talked among themselves, and they realized that they were not being covered as they should. So, you know, after this early voting, you're going to see a lot of ads going out as a group for them to do this, because they realized that, and they were very concerned about it. The NAACP is going to have a discussion, say that, with the major media in this area, but it's a big problem for us. Also, as I said earlier, we are not being educated enough on who's running in their positions. I don't think the African American community realizes the number of African American candidates out there.
Well, you're helping to get that. You're helping to broadcast that.
It helped me, because I didn't realize that I had one African American candidate in my district that was actually running for delegate. I did not know her name or anything else. But after reading her qualifications and listening to what she had to say at the speed dating, I got interested.
Don't we want to be colorblind in these issues? Don't we just care about the person and their positions rather than what race they are?
It's not a matter of being colorblind, and that's an old term that we have a problem with, especially me when I was working here. My CEO and president was saying on some of the issues that I brought up that he was colorblind, and that brought up a red flag to me to be concerned. But it's not so much the fact that they are African Americans. The fact is, because they are African Americans, a number of them, the majority of them, are not covered or is being recognized as running for a position. All the other candidates are, and that's the concern that we have. They want to run on their own merits, but if their information is not out there for the general public, it's a problem. And money is a part of it. Okay, and it's hard for them to raise money if they are not known in their communities. They're trying to be known, but you know, it's a catch-22.
When you say they're not being covered, and you suggest that other people are, I would have thought that that was a problem, particularly with the state delegate races for everybody. I wouldn't. I don't think I've gotten much coverage from any of them except the mailings they've sent me, and I've gotten a lot of those in my district.
Well, I can tell you, in listening to some of their tales and some of the stories and some of the opportunities that they tried to make for themselves, it's true. They're not being covered. And then when we had the press conference and not one media representative came forth, you would think that when we tell them, and we send out press releases, that you have 32 African American candidates running in Montgomery County alone, that alone should be, you know, newsworthy right there. They did not show.
We have about a minute left. A little bit less than a minute. Anything?
So one of the things that always strikes me about all kinds of concerns in Montgomery County about what or what doesn't happen, your concerns from the business community about the representation they are or are not getting. The little I know about politics includes this one thing, is that it's not in the moment. Like, all of us need to be mindful that between the election cycles is the time when we have to be working the hardest to surface new candidates, to make those relationships, you know, to poke at the press to do what's right. So is the NAACP going to go forward after this?
About 15 seconds.
It's going to be more than a poke. It's going to be a punch, because they're sending out letters to them as we speak. And we are going to do another press conference on that alone, because that's a problem, and that's why I took opportunity to say bring it forth now.
And I'm sure Montgomery Community Media will be there to help cover it. I appreciate it. Thank all of you for joining me today for this show. It's been great. Thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Moores. Please join us next week at this very same time.